At what point does camping become glamping? When your tent has a chandelier? When someone brings you breakfast in bed? Or, according to one Reddit user, when you have the audacity to show up with a single pillow? And RVers? We apparently crossed the glamping line the second we added air conditioning and a mattress that doesn't roll up. In this episode, though, we are calling BS because if you've ever hauled a trailer through traffic, backed it into a site in the rain, and leveled it with two kids screaming about their dinner, congratulations, you're not glamping, you are surviving. Welcome to episode 61 of the RV Canucks podcast, and today we are unpacking the glamper versus camper debate. We'll dive into the internet's wildest opinions and talk about when you are camping and when you are just playing house in the woods, and make our case for why most RVers belong in a category of their own. Plus, tell the people what we have an update on today.
For PEI, I think we have some good stuff to share. Kind of the no plan trip is coming together with a couple,
plan?
Let's call it ideas.
Okay.
An organization of ideas, not a plan, an organization of ideas.
Okay, fair. But first, we always have to start it off with our lovely sponsors for season 5, that is Niagara Trailers. Of course, this episode is brought to you by Niagara Trailers, because if you're going to be accused of glamping anyway, you might as well do it in comfort and style. Whether you're hunting for a home on wheels with a king bed and a fireplace, or you're just looking for something that doesn't leak when it rains, Niagara Trailers has you covered, literally. Family owned and proudly Canadian, they've been matching campers with the perfect rig for over 50 years, and they have hundreds of new and well cared for used models, some of which we'll be featuring on our socials in the upcoming weeks. Visit niagaratrailers.com to browse new and used trailers, book service, or just dream a little bigger. Tell them the RV Canucks sent you. No tent pegs required. So, glamping.
Glamping. I think I just want to level set people with an idea here.
Do you want to tell them the truth that this is the second time we're recording this? Because we just did the best podcast ever about glamping and got to the very end and congratulated each other and realized that I didn't hit record on the audio.
Indeed you didn't. And so here we are a little bit late at night.
Redoing it again.
Still laughing, still married.
But that's okay, because I actually cried in the first episode for real, and we'll see if I can get through this one without tears. Okay, so glamping. We need to discuss what glamping is, and maybe to set the stage and to start off the conversation, this episode sort of came out of a conversation or a set of conversations that I had over the past couple of weeks with work. So I do a lot of speaking for work these days, and I talk to a lot of people, and invariably you're meeting all kinds of people and you're talking about hobbies and passions and, just what's going on in your life. And naturally the conversation usually turns to camping, and people will say, oh wow, like where do you travel? Or, what kind of trailer do you have or whatever? And we will say how far we go. And I will say, oh, we have a 29-foot trailer or whatever. And people will be like, oh, like 8 times out of 10, it's like, oh, so you're a glamper. Like, so you glamp. Like, that's not really camping. And I'm like, that always like interests me a ton when people say that, because it's like, well, what do you mean by that? Right? And so I've never actually had the guts to say that to anybody that I've been talking to in the moment, but I did take that and do a ton of research on the internet about what is glamping. And oh my gosh, when I tell you, this is going to be no surprise to anybody listening to this episode, that people have opinions, and they tend to be really strong opinions. So I think we're going to go through some of these definitions. We're going to talk about the merits of the comments that these people have made. And then we're going to talk a little bit, I think, about why maybe RVers should be in their own category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the first comments, and I think it kind of sums up a lot of like what I think about when I think of glamping, when somebody says, glamping I consider to be any form of roughing it, but with really cushy amenities. If you set up a tent, but have a generator, a full-blown bed in your tent, and spend all of your time on your phone, to me, you're glamping, not camping. So when I picture glamping, the first thing that pops into my mind is a beautiful white canvas tent, and there is some kind of, oriental rug in the middle of it, and there is a 4-poster bed and a bug net, and some beautiful concierge delivers coffee service in the morning on a silver platter. Like that, to me, I feel like is glamping, like African savanna.
I have this vision in my head like it's Victorian times in Downton Abbey, and like our favorite butler is going to come down from the mansion to serve us like little cucumber sandwiches, and we're going to sit in uncomfortable clothes and have a picnic and have that kind of savannah experience in a rolling meadow. Like, I think I could maybe understand the logic behind it. I don't know, like, if it gets you outdoors, go for it, right?
Absolutely. But I think that probably aligns to me, like that comment aligns with what I would consider, if we were looking just strictly for a definition, that's what it would be to me. But the next comment is pretty interesting, and I think you might have a lot to say about it, but it's a 3-part comment that says, number 1, if you shower in the vehicle you're camping in; 2, if you have no need to bring a cooler; and 3, if you can cook your meal inside.
I think we're starting to get into the meat of things here now. Like, we're getting into the meat of stuff. And by that, I mean, if I rolled in a 30-foot trailer, a 35-foot trailer, a 40-foot fifth wheel, and it's got a bed and a shower and a dinette and a fridge and a toilet, I think most people would say, like, that's pretty luxurious and it's glamping. But if I come into the campground with my minivan and my 20-foot trailer, and it's got a bed and a shower and a dinette and a fridge and a toilet, we somehow don't think that they're glamping. And I think in our heads we have this, like, all of us do this. We have like this judgment going on, right? We're making a judgment, and I'll bet you in that case we're almost judging them like, what are the Joneses doing? Like, keeping up with the Joneses, and we're kind of maybe jealous, I'll bet you. But when you think about this, that person in the 45-foot trailer has more space, and sure, there's probably some more extra gadgets in there, but fundamentally it's not a lot different than the 20-foot travel trailer that came in on a minivan, and we're cutting the minivan guy a lot of slack here.
Well, I think that's fair, and I think there's a reply to this comment that said, yeah, pretty much all basic house amenities is a solid glamping standard. It's just playing house in the woods with like a laughing emoji. So I think that's where you're getting at. Okay, this is different than what I do, so therefore it's worse than, or it's not real camping. And another user said, small campers and trailers are where I draw the line. So to your point, is it 10 feet? Is it 15 feet? Is it 40 feet?
And this is the part of it where I think, as we have this discussion, we have an idea of what glamping is, but the people that call you glamping can never actually really define what camping is, right? We have, everybody listening has a sense in their head of what that might be, but when these discussions are happening and the people that accuse you of glamping, they never actually define for you what camping is.
Well,
right?
Au contraire, Dan, because there are a few comments that talk about this very thing. So somebody did say, very simply, electricity is what turns perfectly good camping into perfectly good glamping.
Okay, so let's have a discussion here. Let me put this before the jury. We've all gone through the campground and we've all seen somebody set up their dining tent and their sleeping tent, and there's an extension cord.
Yeah.
Are they glamping? I guess by some people's definition they would be glamping, and yet they're in a tent, right? And they've got some extra amenities with them. So are they glamping? I guess by somebody's very strict definition they would be. But yet I think we would all, common folk or reasonable folk, would say it's probably still more camping, right? It's not glamping, right? They're probably still trucking her off to the outhouse and the comfort station for showers and to use the toilet. Yeah.
But listen, on that point, how many years did we own our trailer where we never ever, and still probably we've only ever used the stove inside a handful of times, but we never did. We were like, nope, we will sleep in this thing, but we will cook every 100% of our meals outside. We didn't use the shower, and we didn't use the toilet for certain activities. We went to the outhouse or the actual comfort stations because we wouldn't go number 2 in the trailer for a long time. And to us, that was like a mental line of like, well, we still want to camp, but like we were acknowledging that we had made this massive leap from this tent trailer to this, almost 30-foot travel trailer.
So I have 2 thoughts on this, and I'll save the most passionate one for the end. So stay tuned.
All right.
You're right. camping is a bit of an or coming up to a trailer in the camping experience is a bit of an evolution. We started in tents, and then we moved up to pop-up tent camper, and then we got the trailer that we have now. It's an evolution. We still do a lot of our cooking outside, almost all of it. We have not used the oven so much that we still don't even remember how to light it when we do want to use it to salvage a plate of nachos that started outside when we were cooking, so we had to pull the manual. So in that sense, I don't know that we're glamping. The passionate side of me is like, I don't have to answer to anybody. In my entire life, I have slept in a trench. I have slept with 10 people inside an Arctic tent that was only designed to hold 5 when it's minus 40. And you're like, minus 40 Fahrenheit or minus 40 Celsius? Anything below minus 30 doesn't matter whether it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. I have slept in tents. I have slept in lean-tos. I have slept under the stars. I don't have to answer for anybody at my almost age of 50 for wanting to sleep in a trailer. And I will say, and I brought this point up with a little bit of humor in the first take of this episode, if you've ever been in our trailer and like seen our mattress, it's in desperate need of an upgrade. There's a hole on my side and it is not comfortable. Like, we're one step up from, and I'm exaggerating here, from like cardboard boxes. And I will tell you, I have slept at least 3 nights, if not, nope, it was 8 nights in a tent on cardboard boxes on top of an air mattress, to prove my point that I don't need to answer to anybody about where I'm going to sleep when I go out with my trailer into the forest, and maybe not the forest.
Okay, but to be fair, I wouldn't call any of that camping. Your specific scenarios were sleeping, but not camping.
Right, but to those people that don't like glampers and they're proving that they're tougher, I've already proved my toughness, and that's the point of what I'm trying to tell people.
Dan wins.
Yes.
Okay. Well, back on the tent scenario, because I think this is really interesting, because when you were talking about the tent with electricity, is that glamping? And somebody literally said, I would call it glamping if your tent is tall enough to stand up in, you bring or use any electronic devices beyond a cell phone, you use a cot or a real mattress of any kind. An air mattress is borderline. You mostly just hang around camp and there's little to no hiking or outdoor activities happening, and you bring fancy food and beverages, but there is no explanation on what constitutes fancy food and beverages. But that is that person's opinion.
In the Supreme Court of Camping, I bring before the justice, if using an air mattress is pushing the boundaries of glamping, I then ask, what is this person sleeping on? Cardboard boxes, potentially. Are they going and cutting down pine boughs and grass clippings out of a meadow to build their bed? Which I am not condoning the cutting of vegetation to build your bed. But that's what you would have to do unless you're prepared to just sleep on the dirt. And then is a sleeping bag too much, or should you only bring a wool itchy blanket? Like, I think this person...
I'm getting the vibe of I hang a hammock in the trees and have a Hudson's Bay blanket.
Or they're a voyager from the Hudson's Bay Company, and they're a fur trader of some sorts that's paddling from fort to fort. Okay. If that's your jam, it's your jam. Like, I do like a good paddle into the backwoods, don't get me wrong, but like, live and let live.
But I think that's actually a really good point, because I think a lot of the people who were writing these comments, in fairness to them and in their perception, and perception is reality, to them, what their normal version of camping is probably our version of roughing it. Like that version of, you put your hiking boots on and you strap some pots and pans and your sack to your back and you hike into a campsite. And, you know, I basically lived a lot of my teenage years like that, hiking into Alouette Lake and cliff jumping. And that's where you would swim, where you would bathe, and you would sleep on rocks. But that to a lot of people is like normal camping. And the only thing I can equate it to in like actual real life terms is like, the people who think the city is great because they've never lived outside of the city. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, this is that perception of like, they only know that. So to see us rolling in our amazing, you know, trailer that's 15 times the size of their hammock, that is glamping.
I think it's the spirit of the word. And we all know the way the spirit of the word gets used. And when the spirit of the word is like, I went glamping, or we're a glamping style campground, or something like that, where we're kind of maybe poking fun at ourselves or using it as an adjective to describe the way that we camp, I think that's okay. I think that when you start to like pass judgment on people, the way that you use glamping, I think that's probably where it's not helpful for the overall experience. And I think to a post that I read this week on Facebook about a gentleman in Ontario, and he was in his 70s, and he put together a very articulate argument for a thoughtful academic discussion of why people with larger trailers should have exclusive access to the large sites in a provincial park and that people in tents shouldn't. But as you can imagine, on Facebook, people started to like really rip it apart. And I didn't agree with him, right? I don't agree with his idea, but I understood it from like an academic discussion about the way that it went. And so I think this is where we get into problems with the terms about glamping and camping. It's how we're going to use the word. It's how we're going to engage people when we have discussions about this stuff. And I think that's where we kind of get into the problem with it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So then let me ask you this. Is glamping then location specific? If we are camping, for instance, at Ocean Lakes Family Campground in Myrtle Beach, where they have pizza delivery on golf carts and they have a lazy river and they have mat racer water slides and the ocean is right on your doorstep and they have nice paved level sites and you are never leaving the resort, is that glamping? Even though our trailer in any other location, like a provincial park, would be considered camping.
I submit to the jury that we're at a resort and it's neither glamping nor camping. We're at an RV resort.
Okay.
And I say that with a little bit of fun. It's about the experience. It's about making memories with your family. It's about the things that you do. And I think that that's what I would say about that. Is it glamping? Yeah, okay. But it's not glamping. You're at a resort. You went for a materially different experience than camping to make memories. I would take it the other way and I would say there's places like that have splash parks that have like provincial parks, state parks, and they have splash pads and pools and playgrounds. If you're in a tent sleeping on an air mattress and you don't have an electricity and you let your kids go to the pool or the playground, is that glamping? Are they glamping? Like if they're true campers, they should like shield their kids in some rigid orthodoxy and not allow them to use the pool. They can only swim in the rocky beach in the cold water. Right? Like I think we're kind of splitting hairs and having fun with it a bit, but where do you draw the line, I guess, is my question.
So what you're basically saying is glamping is a state of mind.
Yeah, it's a state of mind, and yet it's okay in my mind, right? I take a little bit of a libertarian view to the whole thing, like live and let live. You're when we go to a place like Ocean Lakes or we do that, we're not pretending that we were camping, right? We never pretended that we did go camping. So stop accusing me of glamping. I never pretended that I was camping. Like,
fair. But I think the next point, and maybe this is a good transition into like RVers are a separate category. And I do believe that. I do truly believe that we don't really fit that definition of glamping. And whether like I'm using the term RV as in like travel trailer or you have a motorized RV, I think we're kind of in a separate category. And I'll tell you why. Primarily, we deal with stuff as RVers and as travel trailer owners that are not very glamorous, that are not very glamp worthy, right? Like the black tank maintenance and dealing with like a poo pyramid if your black tank backs up, and dealing with leaks. And 2 weeks ago when we spent our entire weekend fixing a plumbing problem in our trailer, I think generally speaking as RV owners, you're on the hook for a lot and you have to kind of know how to pivot and deal with a lot of unsavory situations, whether it's a tire blowout on the road. That's not very glamorous, right? Like it's a whole lot easier to fly into somewhere and go to some beautiful hotel or have a canvas tent that's set up for you with your coffee on the silver platter than it is to be a trailer owner. So I think we belong in our own category. Maybe.
I think we do belong in our own category. Like I think RVing is about experiences. I think what you're describing is a bit of a compare and contrast. You have a trailer and you're towing it through a city and there's a traffic jam and that's difficult, whereas the person who's camping is just in their car and they're a little bit more nimble and they can change lanes easier. And the person with the trailer has more things to set up and potentially more things to break, but hey, setting up a tent on unlevel ground and trying to make yourself comfortable, it comes with its own challenges. The RVer puts his food in the fridge and doesn't have to worry about it, but the guy in the tent who's camping has to go get ice once a day to keep his food fresh to make sure that it doesn't spoil. They're not equal, they're not the same, and they're not different. They're just different experiences that you're going through and different challenges, and I think that's what it's all about and what you're happy with. I'd say if you're not enjoying one or the other, then make a bit of a change. Like if you're camping and you're not having fun, then maybe you need to upgrade. But maybe if you're in a big trailer and you're not having fun, you need to downgrade.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
like
fair.
Simplify things a little. A bit of, the big person needs to declutter and the other person needs to just add a few luxuries to make it a more enjoyable experience, because that's really what this is at the end of the day, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Right? Like it's not necessarily about the destination, to tie this back to like a resort or a glamping experience. It's about the destination sometimes. It's about the favorite little rest stop that you go to, or the favorite antique store, or the truck stop. Like our family loves the Tiviotdale truck stop, and every family in North America has something different. But North America is so varied, right? Like Ontario, Michigan, New York, like we have this boreal forest, and some people think that that's camping. And yet when a teaser for the PEI part of the podcast is, it's in the Maritimes, a lot of open fields is what we're seeing in some of the pictures. And when you get down to the Southwest United States, like there are no trees, it's a rocky desert, and yet it's its own type of beauty.
Yeah.
Right? So who am I to pass judgment on somebody else?
Hear, hear. And I would say, to probably round out this discussion before we move on to PEI, I want to read one last comment. And this comment I've actually saved to my phone because I think it's one that I would like to keep on my phone. It really affected me. I want to refer back to it when we're having hard days. And as this is like version 2.0 of recording this podcast, I'm going to try to get through this comment without crying. But I think that it sums up what this whole discussion, of like the crescendo of this entire discussion. So keep in mind, this particular thread I was reading is 2 years old already. But the person who commented, their screen name was Naked Nomad, but this is what he said. He said, some people embrace change and others have it forced upon them. Thanks to technology, we could, until last year, still go camping. We started out with a tent and sleeping bags, cooking over campfires or a Coleman stove. When getting up off the ground started taking its toll, I built a square drop trailer. We could pretty much take it anywhere we went when tent camping. When my wife was put on oxygen at night, we got a unit that would operate on 12 volts, and I installed a deep cycle battery and 100 watts of solar. Around 6 months before I retired, she was put on oxygen 24/7. Deciding we had not worked all our lives to sit home and vegetate waiting to die, we bought a travel trailer and sold the little one that I had built. We traveled camping in primitive and improved campgrounds, in national forests, monuments, and parks, if not boondocking in them and on Bureau of Land Management property. There is nothing like sitting out in the morning and watching the deer and critters wandering through the campgrounds. We were apprehensive about running a generator for her concentrator, but the amount of support we received from other campers soon dispelled those fears. After 33 years, it's coming to an end. In December of 2022, we were told she is in the final countdown stage. She is in the final countdown of stage 4 COPD. There is nothing more that can be done for her. It may be 10 days, 10 weeks, or 10 months from now, but the end is coming. Glamping versus camping, call it what you will. I call it living life to the fullest.
It's a very powerful story that gentleman shares. And we don't know him, we've never met him, and we never will. And yet, notwithstanding the challenges that his wife had at the very end, and how difficult that must have been, it's an inspiration to all of us, right? It's an inspiration that they found a way to make it happen. And that's really what RVing is for many people. It's about creating an accessibility to the outdoors.
Yeah.
And so most of us, and I'm generalizing here, of course, and there's exceptions to the rule, when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you can rough it a little bit more easily. But you get into your 50s and your 60s and your 70s, you still want to get out into nature, whatever that nature looks like, whether it's the rocky desert of the Southwest or the boreal forest. You want to get into that. And why do you want to get into that? Well, it's about quality of life. And I would like to imagine that couple had a higher quality of life and enjoyed themselves more in the last few years of what was probably a long marriage than if they just got like stuck at home, shut in, right? So they got out there and they did it, and they did it in a travel trailer. So don't judge them. Like, you kind of don't know what somebody is doing or what somebody's day has been like when you see them roll in and what their story is. So like, maybe just cut them a little bit of slack, I think, is what I'm saying. And so my example for that is I have a regular pedal bike, like nothing special, a few gears and a seat. But I see people go by me on like electric bikes with pedal assist. I don't have one. Like, price is is an obstacle right now. Like, I wouldn't buy one on price, but who am I to say whether they should have an electric bike with pedal assist or not? They got out and they're getting a little bit more activity than they normally would have, so that's a good thing, right? So, like, I think we just have to be careful how much we're going to pass judgment on this kind of stuff, right? Just, and I'm like, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm so sanctimonious that I'm better than everybody else. Like, I do pass judgment. We all sit there in the campground, we're like, what is that guy doing? Oh my goodness. Or, wow, that's a really good idea. Hey honey, take a picture of that. We'll have to save that idea for later, right? So we all live and learn from each other, but just like in the back of your head, you know kind of what person you are. And so what if you're glamping? I don't care.
Yeah, and listen, to end on a high note, what you just said reminded me of this comment that I think truly, truly, truly Dan could have written in his sleep. But this is what one user said, and I think it kind of probably sums up the pettiness that lives in all of us to some certain degree, but I laughed out loud when I read it. And this comment said, anyone who brings more or better stuff than me is glamping. Anyone who brings less or worse stuff than me is insane and probably unsafe/unprepared.
I want to meet that person. Like, let's have a cup of coffee. If you wrote that, send us a note, because we'll have a cup of coffee and we'll trade some ideas and we'll have a good chuckle.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
But I think that's a good wrap up. I think we always say, and we'll continue to say forever, there is no wrong way to RV. There is no wrong way to camp unless you are like destroying the environment that you are camping in. Go out there and experience it. Experience life. You're
creating an experience and you're creating a memory.
Yeah.
Right? You're not proving how tough you are.
So, yeah, agreed. So talking about future memories, let's talk about PEI.
So let me just set this up for people in case they haven't caught up on the other episodes. So we are taking our summer vacation in the early part of August for about 2
July.
weeks.
We leave in 3 weeks, Dan.
We leave in 3 weeks. Just so you know, like, we're kind of I'm learning some of the trip as we have this podcast. It's our collection of organized ideas and not a plan. So it's in early July. We're traveling from southwestern Ontario and the west end of the GTA to Ottawa. We are there for about 4 or 5 days. We are going to stay in a hotel. I went on to Facebook Marketplace. I found a storage facility that will store our trailer for that time that we are there. So we're going to, because if anybody knows Ottawa, you cannot bring this trailer downtown. It's not going to work. So we'll go in, we'll pay our money for less than the cost of the campsite per night, leave the trailer, go have a great our daughter's going to a Highland dance competition, a national level competition in Ottawa, so we'll have that great experience. She's going to go back because she has to work her summer job. Melina and I are going to continue on to the Maritimes. So our first day, we leave Ottawa. We drive about 10 hours to the middle of New Brunswick to a town that I am not confident saying on a podcast, so I'm going to throw this one over to Melina.
So I don't think it's the middle, but it's called Nakawik, and it is the place that has the world's largest axe, so not to brag, but we get to stay overnight inside of the world's largest axe. So,
and that one's at a Harvest Host, right?
Yeah, that's at a brewery.
Right, so we're staying at a brewery to Harvest Host. Then we're going down to Alma, New Brunswick, into the Bay of Fundy area to stay at the national park and see the Bay of Fundy, because that's kind of a big attraction.
Which, by the way, I didn't book the bay or the national park until last night. So when I say we're winging it, we're winging it. Like normally speaking, you have to book national parks like on the day they open, which I think Fundy National Park opened in like February or something for bookings. But there was like 1 or 2 sites and it was perfect. Like it happened to work out. If not, we would have found somewhere else.
Yep. So we're gonna, and you've got a friend down there. We're gonna pop in real quick to see. Mm-hmm. So we'll go from the Bay of Fundy area, the 2.5-ish, 3 hours to the middle of PEI, and we're gonna stay in the middle of PEI, and it's kind of like a bit of a spider web plan for the 2 or 3 days that we're there. Is we'll do day trips rather than move the trailer around because PEI is not a super big island. You can kind of be everywhere in kind of, anywhere between 15 minutes, an hour and a half. Does that make sense so far? What I did learn is we are winging it. I thought Melina booked one last night during the hockey game, and she didn't book one. So we kind of need to find out where we're going to stay in the middle, but we have some options.
Meh. We'll figure it out. I have not booked we don't have any. Well, that's not true. We have one Harvest Host booking and PEI the night before we leave. But other than that, we have 3 nights that we need to fill. We would prefer to fill them all in one spot. But hey, it's busy season. We stay where we can stay.
I'm not worried about it. So we do stay at a Harvest Host our last night in PEI near the ferry, because we'll take that ferry to Nova Scotia. And
From Wood Island, right?
Wood Island ferry, and we want to be close enough to the ferry because you need to check in there early before you're sailing, and you don't want to risk missing your boat. Essentially, I think is the idea. It's for convenience more than anything, and that's a cidery. So we're staying at a brewery and a cidery.
So we need to find a winery.
Yeah.
To round out the trifecta.
Right, and then that gets us into Nova Scotia, where we're kind of eyeballing the whole Lunenburg area, Yarmouth. You want to see Digby. There's another special little area that you want to see as well, but that's where planning stopped last night.
Yeah, like I think we're not going to do Halifax on this trip. I don't think it's practical with a trailer. And I do want to visit Lunenburg. Yarmouth is a dark sky preserve, so we're definitely going to spend a night there and hope for clear skies. And I think loop up back around through Digby. And then, time permitting, I would love to cross back over into New Brunswick and then head down, which is a little out of the way, towards Minister's Island, right near St. Andrews, which I would like to visit. It's like an island with... So if you've been to Bolt Castle or like Casa Loma, it's like that type of building that you can tour. And I'm really excited to see that if there's time. If not, we will just bust it home. But I think we have allowed ourselves 3 days to get home, which is pretty reasonable for us.
Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about squeezing something in at the end because we have this new rule of thumb. And I call it like the 18-hour rule, according to Dan.
Not the 300 rule.
Yeah,
we don't play that game.
Which
if I don't even know the whole rule. I don't even know the last 3 or what it stands for, but I know it's like the rule of like don't drive more than 300 miles, don't drive past 3:00 in the afternoon, and like I just feel like we're not there yet. We're still okay given a haul if we need to, because we would rather make distance than stay close to home.
Right, like we've blown through that rule so many times that we don't even follow it. The reason I call it like the 17-hour rule, according to Dan, it can be 18, it can be 16, whatever fits. Like I need to make it work for the situation is I know that we can drive a long distance. You're like, what does this insane maniac think he can do? And I'm like, we were in Thunder Bay and it was at the end of our trip to Western Canada and somebody accidentally bumped the stove handle and filled the trailer with propane while they were using the washroom, and it stunk us out and nothing exploded and it all ended well. But we left Thunder Bay and drove all the way to southern Ontario in one go. So I know that like if we want to squeeze in one last cool trip, that I am confident that I can leave on Saturday and I can have Melina back home and delivered at work for Monday morning, nice and chipper and well rested, and it won't be a problem.
For sure. And I think too, like, I think we were on the road 16 hours when we went to Myrtle Beach the first time. And that was sort of like our test drive for Route 66. And I think it's about a 13-hour drive, and we were 16 on the road because you drive slower with a trailer. So yeah, we are not strangers to long drives, and somehow we've made it work. Lots of podcasts.
And you know
lots of stops. We just stretch our legs a lot.
Yeah, and by that point of the trip, we're like rehearsed about kind of being efficient about moving down the road and yet still experiencing everything that the trip has to offer.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a good spot to leave it, no?
Yep. I think a couple more weeks will be our last sort of regular podcast before we hit the road. And then we will definitely be doing one from the road. So you will get to come along and experience this trip with us. And yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
It's going to be a ton of fun, and I can't wait to get on the road.
Yep. So we'll talk to you all in a few weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.